This lecture covers Adlerian family therapy. My name is Helga Gilbert. Alfred Adler was a contemporary of Freud. He is one of the founding fathers of our modern psychology and has a huge body of work, just a fascinating person to read about and learn about. One of the most interesting things I find about Adler is how much his philosophy on life and family relationships has become practically talk around the dinner table. You may know him from such hits as inferiority complex, birth order, and sibling rivalry. He was the first to emphasize the role the family plays on the development of the individual, and therefore the need to involve the family in finding a solution to the individual's conflict or problem. The influence of the family is profound, according to Adler. Your very outlook on life is formed by your family. Your birth order, your gender, your early relationships with your siblings, your very life within that family will inform what he calls a private logic. He believed your thoughts and feelings had great power over your behaviors. Does this remind you of anything? Well, that sentiment is followed up in cognitive therapy. Remember Albert Ellis and his thoughts on irrational beliefs. So Alfred Adler's theory or school is called the School of Individual Psychology. Now I think maybe something got lost in the translation. By individual psychology, he really means a focus on the undivided person, taking a holistic approach to understanding the individual within the multi-layered context of their lives, their society that they're immersed in, and of course the family and their community. So he started the oldest form of family therapy in the 40s and 50s. He started writing about it and thinking about it and actually doing it. He also began parent and teacher trainings. He conducted classes to train parents and teachers how to work with children in such a way that they would foster cooperation in the children, foster democratic ideals in working with kids. He was a very idealistic man. He was actually a very optimistic man, too, about the good that individuals could create in the world by working in a really good and strong community with each other. One of the famous quotes from him is, "Meanings are not determined by situations, but we determine ourselves by the meanings we give to situations." Again, that's a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy that you hear, because he was such a great thinker that his ideas are heard in later theories and from later thinkers. Adler felt that growing up in a dysfunctional family could create an adult who struggles to be productive and connected to his or her community. The family dynamics that we sort of absorb as children continue to impact our development as adults. We can remain stuck adhering to certain rules or expectations that we learned as kids, he believed. For example, the phrase, maybe a child heard this, or felt that this was sort of a belief of his father. Boys who aren't athletic are geeks and they're weak. Or maybe a daughter hears this from her parents. The only worthwhile career is to be a whatever, a nurse, a doctor. The family has the power to make these statements turn into absolute rules in the mind of the child, to turn these just statements into truths and rules. Then the child has to carry out their life according to them. They may not realize they're doing it even. Now, very important to his theory is the notion of inferiority. He believes that everyone, absolutely everyone, struggles to overcome feelings that they have of inferiority. It starts when you're a child. You feel inferior to adults. You're little. You can't do things. You can't drive. You don't have money. So he believed that in trying to overcome this state of affairs, humans actually become creative and productive and contributing members of society. They want to overcome their inferiority, and in doing so, they really complete themselves. They really strive toward fulfilling their creative powers. However, in some people, the feelings of inferiority do not get channeled so well. The individual tends to become aggressive, self-absorbed, power-hungry, and overinflated ego. Actually, I think he accused Freud of having an overinflated ego, which is kind of funny. A strand running through Adler's work is that of social idealism. He felt that humans are at their best when they're socially interested, socially engaged. He felt that we have life tasks that we need to carry out, and these life tasks are occupation, your job, your work, being part of society, having friendships, love, sexuality. Now, when you look over at Erikson's life cycle, or developmental life cycle of the individual, you see that, age 35 through 65 or something, that's sort of echoed in Erikson's work, where the individual becomes going from a person turned inward and meeting their own needs to someone who's very turned outward toward creating a family, creating a place in society, maybe becoming interested in community affairs or religious affairs, part of their larger family. Adler felt that success as an adult depends on cooperation. That's why he felt it was important to teach it to children. And he also felt that the tasks of life are not to be considered in isolation, since, as Adler famously commented, they all throw cross lights on one another. Basic assumptions of Adler's theory. We've maybe hit on some of these already. The individual can only be understood within his or her social system. Now, as vocational rehab counselors, don't we preach the same? A lot of this fits so beautifully into the beliefs in our field that the individual needs to feel productive, needs to be a part of society. Don't lock up individuals with mental retardation in institutions, right? No, and don't have separate classrooms. Integrate. Also, if we're going to work with an individual to try to come up with a plan for work and independent living and all of that, best practice, we involve the family so that we can really understand where the individual is going to get supports and that the family's on board and that everybody is working toward the same goal. The individual seeks significance within that social system. To get, again, back to rehab counseling, to give an individual with a disability their dignity back, they need to have a significant role in our society. They need to work, and they need to be a part of it completely, wholly, and fully. The social system is so important to our development as adults and our place in it. Adler said that the family is the first social system that the individual must find his or her meaning in, find her place in. So as kids, we're struggling to find out that we're worthwhile individuals and also to find out what our role in the family is. We don't want to be unimportant. We don't want to be forgotten. The family is also profoundly influenced by other things. So we're influenced by the family, but the family is influenced by economic and social conditions, cultural and religious beliefs. And then, as we talked about, now I'm not going to go into Adler's theory on birth order, but it's a huge body of work, and it's endlessly fascinating because, of course, what you try to do is apply it to your own siblings and your role. Let's say you're the firstborn, so, well, of course, I achieved high and have the best job out of all my siblings because, I was the firstborn. I'm the mover and the shaker. Actually, Helga, was the third in the family birth order, so you can look up what that means. But, it's really fun to read about all that, but I'll let you do that on your own. And sibling rivalry, he talks a lot about that in his theory. Now, his theory, though, I just want to say it spans years and years, so that's only part of the whole picture of Adler. Let's talk a little bit about family dynamics. Adler's influence was tremendous, and he informs not only the way current Adlerian family therapists work, but his influence also makes its mark in the more eclectic styles of most family therapists. The language of family therapy isn't all that foreign to any student of psychology. We'll also learn later on about the common threads that run through all the family therapy theories, from Bowen to strategic therapies to narrative therapies. I think that today, while there may be small pockets of strict adherence to a particular type of theory, I think that you'll find in the field that most family therapists are eclectic, choose what works for them and works for a particular family in a particular setting from amongst the nice array of techniques and thoughts. So the family dynamics that we're going to look at here, these go across theories, and this provides a common language and a foundation for the way family therapists begin to understand a family that appears in front of them. Let's look at the first one. Power. The dynamic of power. Which family member is able to make things happen? Who in that family has the authority to make decisions and has the responsibility to carry out the decisions? In a traditional family, it could be the parents or maybe even the father. If the father says, hey, no one's going to talk to the psychologist about our private family issues, then that decision will stand because he truly holds the power in the family. What about a family where the child holds the power? Where the child is overindulged and manipulates the entire family? Perhaps the family decides where to sleep, what to eat, when to turn the TV on and off, according to the child's whims, when the child has taken over the power from the parents. Another dynamic that the therapist might notice in the workings of a family appearing in front of them are boundaries. This will come up time and again in your readings. Weak boundaries are not good. Weak boundaries, well, let me just say this. The book describes boundaries as physical and psychological factors that separate people from one another and organize them. That's from your Gladding's text. Boundaries can be very positive when they serve to guide positive communication, respect between the family members, but when they're weak or non-existent, family members don't feel secure. in being independent people, in being autonomous in their movements and in their decision making. They risk becoming enmeshed and dependent on the family. Now, as a therapist, you can create rules for boundaries. You can help people strengthen their individual boundaries with one another. Like, here's a rule: only one person speaks at a time. Perhaps, Dad always gets to talk over everybody else, gets to interrupt. Really diminishes the other person's power in their statements by just talking over them, because there's no rule that says, hey, you're being rude. I deserve to get to say something here. Another rule might be to protect a boundary or to create a boundary. When Susie is in her room, no one may enter until she gives permission. So, you see, by creating stronger boundaries, you can create a stronger, more secure and independent individual. Someone who feels that they can operate autonomously. Okay, let's move on to coalitions. Coalitions are similar to our alliances between specific family members against another family member. These are negative things. For instance, a daughter and a mother may form an alliance against the father. Or the parents and one child might form an alliance against another child. They take sides on an ongoing issue. They exclude the other person and make decisions without them. Again, it's a way of creating a power play within the family, and it's a very destructive and fragmenting thing to do. But it's a very common thing that individuals doing family therapy begin to see. Later we'll talk about how alliances might even be formed unwittingly between a counselor or a therapist and a family member against another family member, or perhaps alliances are formed between agencies who are trying to work with a family, or coalitions become formed between maybe, let's say, Goodwill and the family versus vocational rehab, or something like that. These triangulations of secret alliances and power plays get drawn out even farther from the family into all the agencies and individuals who might deal with them. So you've got to notice them to make it stop, to not get drawn in yourself. Let's talk about rules and roles. Every family, completely healthy family or terribly dysfunctional family, has a distinct set of rules to follow and distinct roles for each member to play out. Your text describes roles this way: prescribed and repetitive behaviors involving a set of reciprocal activities with other family members. Behaviors family members expect of each other and themselves. And of course, Shakespeare says it really well: all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. The role of mother, the role of firstborn, the role of martyr, mother, or the role of, the responsible one, firstborn. The role of the needy person in the family. The role of the provider. The role of the workaholic. The role of the nurturer. There are so many roles. Let's talk more about the rules that we find in families. The text defines rules as an implicit or explicit guideline that determines family behaviors. So spoken or unspoken, even unconscious. We talked a little bit about some rules already that Adler pointed out. Let's talk about some more. Some examples are, here's a rule. Don't get your father upset by talking about that. Or, don't ever talk about Mom's drinking. Or, now it's a secret that Julie has problems and sees a shrink. What about a rule like, don't express anger? Don't ever do anything that would upset anybody. Some of these might be even gender related. You know, girls don't get all upset like that. Girls don't upset people. You need to be more ladylike. So I don't want to give you the wrong idea here. Rules can be really positive too, and really affirming. A family can have wonderful rules like men and women are equal in the workplace. You can become anything you want to, honey. We believe in you. Or, it's okay to make mistakes. It's all right. Doesn't mean anything. Keep going. Or, we love you when you're happy and sweet, and we love you when you're difficult and hard to be around. We love you unconditionally. The last family dynamic that a family therapist would need to be aware of and look for so that they can work on it are patterns of communication. These could be things like double messages, being passive-aggressive. Maybe this family has a pattern of withholding information or speaking in ways that completely avoid emotion or feelings. Perhaps, well, withholding information, let me go back to that. A statement might be, I'm going out. When are you coming back? I don't know. Or, everything's fine, don't worry about it. You know, that kind of pattern of communication is not really, hey, let's sit down and have a nice chat about how things are going between us or what's going on in your life. Here's another pattern, is overgeneralizing without giving any specifics. Oh, you always make me feel stupid. You never once in your life did anything except care about what was good for you. Well, therapy is really useful in helping solve communication problems. By teaching people how to communicate specific, in the here and now, first person, singular statements, families can really move forward significantly. They can begin to say what they mean and hear what they need to hear. So this concludes the lecture on Alfred Adler.